once I started interviewing high achievers regularly and noticed that they were saying no 20 to 50 times more than everybody else, I started doing a bit of dissection. And I realized, first of all, with Richard Branson, something to the effect of say yes to everything you're passionate about.
Hello and welcome to the Service-Based Business Society podcast. I am your host, Tiffany-Ann Bottcher. If you are ready to scale your success, grow your business, and live that entrepreneurial life, click subscribe because we're about to get started. Welcome back to another episode. This week, I'm thrilled to be joined by Corey Poirier, a multi-time TEDx speaker, founder of Blue Talks, and the author of The Enlightened Passenger. Corey has dedicated his career to empowering entrepreneurs and leaders to achieve sustainable growth through enhanced productivity and leadership. We're going to talk all about the profound power of saying no, crafting personal mantras, and the habits that drive high achievement. Corey's wisdom, drawn from years of speaking at prestigious venues like Harvard and building a community of over 500 impactful speakers, offers fresh perspectives on setting boundaries and finding clarity in a busy world. Welcome to the show, Corey.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great episode, and I can't wait to dive in. So first, why don't we kick it off with just a little bit of information about you and how you got into the space?
Wow. I'll try to give you a really super short Reader's Digest version because I know that's a question that could go long, meaning like I could cover a lot within that one question. But I guess short version of who I am and how I got to what I'm doing now is I came up in a small little town, raised by a single mother, basically thought you should say yes to everybody and figure out how to do it later. Decided to start interviewing high achievers early on and started learning that a lot of what I had thought and been taught might have been true for some people, but it wasn't true for the people that I was studying. And so I basically started, I'll say, consuming and obsessing over the success habits and traits of the top achievers. And ultimately, following that and pursuing that led to everything else that's happened since. So like becoming a speaker was a part of that. Deciding to help other experts launch their speaking or expert business was a part of that. Writing books was probably a part of that. Maybe the only thing in my life that wasn't really a part of that was writing music and performing stand-up comedy. But everything else I did was really a part of that, going out, obsessing over what made certain people different, and then trying to implement it and see if what they had found and what I was learning actually rang true for what I was experiencing when I implemented this stuff. So I think that's the quickest Reader's Digest version I can give you of how I'm doing what I'm doing now, which is really helping experts, speakers, authors, coaches, etc., essentially up level and be positioned as kind of the go-to person in their industry.
I think that piece is so important and ultimately applies to every single industry and often is kind of that understated, people start a business because they're passionate about something and then it's they get going, but it really comes down to being that person, the expert in your field, and regardless of the industry, you don't have to be a speaker in order to be really regarded as the expert.
Yeah, I would agree totally. And I would say, when we're helping people become positioned as the expert, we're not helping them. I always make this clear to people. We're not helping you become a better chiropractor, or we're not also helping you shield not being a good chiropractor. We're ultimately aiming to work with people that either are good at their craft or are getting really good at their craft. But what we help them do is become the dentist that wrote the book on it versus just the dentist next door. And so what I mean by that, it's like, if you compare it to Hollywood, if you look at somebody who's won an Oscar versus somebody who hasn't been up for an Oscar, whether we like it or not, the person that's won the Oscar is going to get better roles. They're going to get paid more. They're going to get sought after more. People are going to watch their movies more. And so we're trying to help people become kind of the Oscar winners of whatever industry they're in, which goes back to my point about if two dentists are operating on the same street and one wrote the book on dentistry, literally it could be called the Book of Dentistry, and the other one has never written a book. And the one that wrote the book on dentistry is also featured every Monday on the local news channel and so on. Most people, which, I mean, this is not even speculation, most people, it's been proven, if all other things are equal, most people are going to want to go to the dentist that's the local celebrity. And I would say this part's not always proven, but it mostly happens. They'll wait longer to see them and they'll pay more money to see them. So that's what we're helping people is position themselves in such a way that they can demonstrate how really good they are and get people to notice that they're that good versus them maybe toiling around for years and years as the best kept secret ever.
Absolutely. So important. So one of the things that you said when you were talking about your story was that you were saying yes to everything. And I think that as business owners, a lot of people feel the need to say yes to everything. It's that kind of desire to please. The customer is always right. We must do all the things. And people who've listened to the podcast know that I typically disagree with this a little bit because there's only so much of you to go around and whatnot. But gosh, it's hard. And I mean, I'm a bit of a people pleaser myself, so I know that it's hard to say, but what has your experience been?
Yeah. I mean, so ultimately, again, I said off the top that I used to, there was a Richard Branson quote that I heard years ago. And the quote I heard was, say yes to everything and figure out how to do it later. And that really stumped me because I'm like, this guy's running hundreds of businesses and he's saying yes to everything. So clearly I'm supposed to say yes to everything. And then my grandfather, who was a carpenter, grade 3 education, but a carpenter in a small town, he was my point of an entrepreneur, like what was successful as an entrepreneur. And he told me, oh, how I've done a lot of this stuff is I always say yes to every customer's request. So again, Tiffany, I'm being groomed to believe yes is the right answer. And then some things, once I started interviewing high achievers regularly and noticed that they were saying no 20 to 50 times more than everybody else, I started doing a bit of dissection. And I realized, first of all, with Richard Branson, that the quote I was hearing over and over was only part of the quote. I found the original quote, and it was something to the effect of, say yes to everything you're passionate about and figure out how to do it later. Meaning that there's a key difference there that you're passionate about makes a big difference versus just everything. And then my grandfather, I had to look at the fact that he was a carpenter in a small town. That's a different beast or a different role or different capacity than, let's say, Tony Robbins, who has whatever amount of employees and people trying to get to him every 5 minutes of every day. It's it's just a different role. And what my grandfather was saying was true for him. It really made sense for him. But his job, like he was literally would go to a job site and then the job would be that job for 4 months or 3 months or 2 months. So there was no other distractions. He wasn't like trying to juggle 75 things. He was the foreman. Even when he was the foreman, he was still answering the questions to his employees that were working on that job. So everything was fixed around supplying or working with this one client or customer for 4 months. Well, of course, it makes sense to say yes to that customer if they're your only customer for 4 months. Yeah. I just didn't know the context whenever I first heard it. So what I've discovered since is no is the new yes. And I believe many of us, in most circumstances, A, should make no our new mantra, and B, even if we're not in a role like I just described with Tony Robbins, we still need to start practicing saying no more, because I believe that the overwhelm we're seeing by so many people, a lot of that is people pleasing, and a lot of that is saying yes to everything.
I think that there's so many key pieces to what you just said, so many value pieces there. But I think, the first one that stuck out to me was context. And how often are we taking advice or a quote or something somebody said, or even, one little paragraph in a whole book where that has become the piece that people think about or remember or gets shared. And it's like, well, but hold on. There was a whole piece there in the middle that was so important. And it's, it's the part that people share on social media is only, the icing on the top of the cupcake. Nobody shares about the actual cupcake. And let me tell you, the cupcake was a lot harder to make than the icing on the top. It's always Absolutely. This context that's missing. And we're also talking a little bit about where in the journey, which is something I often talk about. And so what it works for one person in one situation, very different situation, and really identifying, you're saying, hey, this works for some people, but those high achievers, that's different. And so really deciding where you are in your journey and where you want to be. Because if you want to be a high achiever, you can't be thinking small. You can't be doing these other things that sure worked for somebody. They do, but maybe not for the journey that you're on and your destination.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And something else that you just said about social media. I've said that on social media, we're living a filtered life. And so I have a talk that I've delivered numerous times. I want to deliver it again soon, but it's called Living the Unfiltered Life. And it's the idea of understanding, well, first of all, us being transparent and authentic with how we're showing people to do stuff on social media. But then at the same time, if people aren't going to be authentic, us also, now us, I'm generalizing both ways, us doing our own due diligence with
Yes.
seeing if a person really is what they say. And I did a talk at Columbia University a few years back, and I want to highlight this in the sense that people can basically run a Facebook ad and say, let me show you how to have this house and this car. And literally they could do that by standing in front of somebody's house and car. And we don't see whenever the camera goes off and the person comes out with a gun and says, get off my lawn. We don't see that part. And so I wanted to show people that perception isn't always reality. And so what I did was I have a Rolex. It was one of those things years ago. It was just more of a self-worth, like to prove to myself I deserve
Mm-hmm.
this. And to be honest with you, Tiffany, it's been on my wrist 4 times ever. Like I'm not a watch wearer, and I thought I was going to be, and I'm not. But what I did was we went to New York, and my wife and I, she was on the trip with me. We went down to, I forget which street it's called, but if I heard the name, I'd know. But it's a street where they sell a lot of inauthentic items. And so I
Yeah.
went and bought Folex.
Okay.
But it like literally looked so good that there were 2 people in the room where we were doing the event that had Rolex, and they're like, oh my God, that is amazing. How do you want to sell it? And then it was literally a fake Rolex. So I did in my talk, I showed the cameraman, Tyler, our cameraman. I said, Tyler, I want you to zoom in and show this is really a Rolex because I want people to see what I'm doing is real. And I decided that at Columbia University, this is the place to separate myself from material stuff. So I hope you guys can see what I'm doing. This is a hammer like my grandfather used to use as a carpenter. And then I walked over and smashed the Rolex. And you can hear in the room. And so then I took off my jacket. So I was wearing a sports coat, which I do wear sometimes to time, like a blazer. And I was
Yeah.
wearing dress shoes. And I took off the dress shoes and the blazer, threw it to the side, and put on sandals. And what I would normally wear, a dress shirt, jeans, and sandals. And I said, "This is the real me. That was not a real Rolex." But how many of you believed it was? And what I was trying to demonstrate is that's what social media can be like. We believe the
Mm-hmm.
person sitting in front of the house really owns the Rolex when realistically they might not own the Rolex or the house. And so this was a long tangent to say I agree with you that we have to either stop following what people say in social media unless we know what they're saying is authentic, or as creators, we need to start becoming more authentic when we create stuff. And I think that one's less likely to happen as a general rule. I think good creators are always going to do it right. And creators that are trying to get this shortcut are probably going to say they've made $1 million when they haven't. That's probably not going to change. So the only part I think that's easier to change is us starting to do our own due diligence. And if somebody says they've done something, at least do a bit of research to see if everything matches.
100%. I think that there has become this almost whole life online. It's the rented Ferraris, the private planes that never leave the runway, and although in a big scale, you think, oh yeah, obviously, but there's small things. It's the coaches that coach coaches but have never done it, and it's really deciding. You were talking about how you identified these high achievers, and then you decided what were those people doing, and really identifying when you're looking at anyone. Do those people, are they living the life that I want? Are they walking the walk that I want? Because number one, you can always take bits and pieces and know what they say, in anything in life. If they say 10 things, take the 5 that you want and toss the rest. But make sure that the person is in alignment with who you want to be, the values that you want to portray, and the, overall achievements that you're looking for, because you can take advice from someone that is doing none of what you want. And sure, it's advice and you could follow it and it works for them for what they want. But I think that due diligence online, especially in the generation of AI and all of these things, it becomes harder and harder.
Yeah, it's easier and easier to deep fake stuff now.
Yes.
And it's interesting. I won't go too far down this rabbit hole, but I saw somebody recently post that it was something to do with the moon landing and saying, Buzz Aldrin said that it didn't happen. And then when you go deeper down the rabbit hole, you see that he didn't say that, but it was spliced up to see that. And then there's the ones that say, this is what, the moon landing, come on, this is not even a real moon landing. And then you go compare it to the original, it's a different video. What I mean is the crazier part is if you don't do your due diligence now, how are you going to keep up whenever somebody can make a Tom Cruise video looking like he's saying he's about to shoot someone that he's really not going to? And that he was never a part of that video. I interviewed a bunch of influencers at VCon, Gary Vaynerchuk's event. And I asked him the question, Gary, during the journalist setting, what happens in the future with all this deep fake stuff and everything? Like, how are we going to protect ourselves from being scammed over and over, or like crucifying people for something they didn't even say because somebody made a video? And he actually said, and I'm just sharing what he said because I thought it was brilliant. He said he believes that's where Bitcoin, the technology that works on Bitcoin, is going to actually serve us even better than the value of Bitcoin. The blockchain technology, he believes what's going to happen at some point. And I think it's a cool, let's say, prediction is we're all going to have our own blockchain site. And that's going to be the only place you can be 100% certain that what you're getting is really from me.
Interesting.
So that's a side track. But what I
Very
will say
interesting.
is it's also at least a touch point on the fact that what you said is true is these days you can never be 100% for sure that what you're following is legitimate and all that kind of stuff. So the best you can hope to do is at least do a little bit of extra work to see the I's dot and do the T's cross. Like, for example, somebody that says, I'm going to show you how to crush it on YouTube, and then they have their YouTube channel at the bottom of the page, or you ask to see their YouTube channel and they have 8 subscribers and 50 views. And then you say to them, well, wait a minute, you're selling me this. How come you're not using it? Well, I'm not trying to become an expert. Like, they have excuses as to why. But my thing is, if you're going to show me how to do that, you should have proof that you've done that. And
Yes.
and just I will say there's a lot of people that haven't, yet they're out there every day pitching me. So I have to believe they're convincing people to sign up with them to help them crush it on YouTube whenever they haven't even done it themselves. So I think even that level of research, like if they're saying, I'm going to show you how to grow your Facebook following and engagement, and you go to their fan page and they have 2 likes every now and then, I think there's telltales online. But a lot of us don't want to go down the path because it takes extra work, or we feel, well, they wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. But I can tell you honestly that this is stuff that can take you 15 minutes, and it's common stuff. Like, it's not like I don't have to be a tech person to go on their page and see how many followings and likes and comments they have. If they have 0 comments on their last 40 posts, how are they going to prove to me that they can actually get me a bunch of engagement?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you talked a little bit about saying no to more things and kind of your journey to that. How has that really shifted your current place in life?
Well, if I take it just from a base level, what it's done to improve my life, I gained some sanity back. Just not saying yes to every single thing that comes your way is liberating. It's freeing. There's a lot of, and by the way, I'm still a work in progress. Like, I'm still literally right now, we're working on with Blue Talks. What's a yes for Corey? What's a no for Corey? Meaning, like, what does Corey have to offload? I'm actually reading a great book right now, highly recommend, called Buy Back Your Time. And honestly, the biggest things in it are how to figure out what's a delegation, what's a replacement, and what you should be doing. And so I've been working on that. And I'm still working on that. But as a person which I don't know much about this, so I shouldn't even bring it up, Tiffany, but human design, I found a manifesting generator, which basically we're not good at delegating. So this has been like a 5-year progress for me just with Blue Talks. It's probably taken me longer to scale it because I don't like delegating. And I've had to fight that. And so saying no, that is delegating, right? Like, when you say, no, I'm not going to do this, but so-and-so will, and so-and-so will do a better job than me because they're better at it and they enjoy it. That's a no. So it's been a work in progress. But what it's done is, both from a personal point of view, me saying no, and a business point of view, it's freed up my deck to do stuff I really like. So, I have a 7 and a 4-year-old. My wife is dealing with some health stuff right now. I've been able to be all in on that stuff because of my no's. People say to me, how do you get so much crap done? Like, I have a friend that thought I should write a book called Getting Crap Done, but a different word than crap. And she thought, you need to write this book because you seem to be able to do more in 35 hours a week than a lot of people do in 90 or 100. Most of that comes back to my no's. So I figured out what my personal mission statement is, and it ties into my business mission statement as well. And by knowing that, knowing that, and then being able to say no to almost everything that doesn't fit that 5-point test, it allows me to free up most of what I don't like doing to do what I love doing. So I have more energy because I'm mostly doing what I love, which means I'm not really working. And B, I say no to a lot of things that would drain my energy. And so I think both of those have allowed me to be more productive and also be more fulfilled. And so I know that's sort of abstract, but that's what it's allowed me to do. I mean, we can dive into how and how I do it and how I do it without burning bridges. But really, at the base level, that's what it's done for my life.
So you talked about a 5-point framework, and I want to come back to that in a second, but I feel like no's are tough, and it kind of almost is like, whether it's saying no to something or setting a boundary, I've shared, we've had many episodes on the podcast, we've had some boundary experts saying no. I have to share something that happened last year. Last year I was on a sales call, and I've been practicing saying no, actually. And I was on a sales call with someone who was a referral of someone else that I knew. And it was such a misalignment on the call. When you're talking to someone and you just know it's not the right opportunity.
Yes.
And I would say I'm better at it now. I'm something I'm working on, but I said, hey, like I just really am not sure that there's a good fit here. And it didn't necessarily make sense. She was using a software we didn't necessarily support, and we kind of went through. And this lady, she ended up flying off the handle that I said no. She was so excited that we were going to work together, and she was like chatting in Facebook groups and bad mouthing me, and went up one side and down the other. It was this whole big thing. And I'm going to tell you, I was so nervous the next time to say no, because sometimes, when you were talking about not burning bridges, I mean, that story comes to mind for me right away, because I was trying so hard to get better at it. And let me tell you, it was a blaze of burning glory, and I still, even just talking about it, feel that like, oh gosh, it was awful. So tell me, how do we do it without such situation?
Yeah. So, I mean, and I will say what I'm about to share, you almost have to, because for everything I say, there's always variables. So you almost have to customize it a bit for the situation. But I'll tell you the base level, and then, there's ways you could customize it based on what you just said. So, at the core level, I'll tell you where I learned it, because I always believe credit where credit's due. I learned this from Chalene Johnson, who is the Turbo Jam Beachbody program. She was like the head of that craze. And then she's now become an Instagram sort of influencer and what have you. And she was talking to me about how they were running like 600 studios. If you want a comparison, think about like P90X, or I forget what the other one was called with Sean T. But there's a bunch of, these workout programs, or even like what Richard Simmons used to do. But like she had 600 of those happening. And the ones that were closest to her in California, the instructors, if they had stuff going on, they would reach out to her and say, Chalene, can you take over for me this Friday? And, here she's running a company with 600 locations, like 600 classes. The DVDs were selling. They ended up selling, I think, 7 million copies. So like all of this is blowing up, and she's saying yes to go teach a class in the middle of all that. So she finally realized that it was impacting negatively her home life, because she was saying no. So here's something we learn over time. It took me a long time to learn this, but every time you say yes, you have to say no to something else.
Absolutely.
Every time you say no, you're saying yes to something else. So when you understand that, in her case, she was saying no to her family to go fill in for this one class. And so she finally realized that the best way for her to say no was to be honest about it. But what she also did, the psychology behind this is brilliant. So what she started doing is saying, look, I would love to help. However, I have to talk to Brett. Now, Brett's her husband. I have to talk to Brett because sometimes he schedules stuff and sometimes I do. I have to talk to Brett to make sure that me saying yes isn't going to interfere with something we have going on with the family. As you know, we're a very family-driven business, and the family's really important, and I'm already maxed out in time. So I just got to make sure I'm not saying yes and then having to go apologize at home. So if you can give me a day or two to find that out, I'll come back and let you know. And if I can't help, I'll try my best to find somebody who will. And so that's what I started doing. I started figuring out what's the equivalent of, I got to check with my family, and what's the equivalent of, can I get back to you tomorrow? And what's the equivalent of, if I can't help, I'll try to refer you to somebody else who can. And that approach, I'm just going to say it this way, in saying no in that way hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times since, I can't remember one time where somebody got really mad at me. Now, why I say you have to customize this is because somebody wanting to work with you or thinking they're going to be getting business from you is slightly different than somebody asking you to help them with this project or to help them move their couch or whatever that looks like. So you still have to kind of dig it a bit deeper, because their thinking as well, probably thinking is like, well, what do you mean you're at capacity? Why are we even on this call then? And like, there's some variables there when it's like they think we're going to be business partners or work together. So I've had people that reach out to me and say, can you write the foreword for my book? Can you write an endorsement for my book? Hey, I think we should partner our two companies. There's a girl I can think of right now who's had some challenges over the last few years, mental challenges that she's gone through, some really deep stuff. And 3 times she said, we should merge our companies and do all this stuff. And I just had a vibe that, A, I don't want to do that from a branding point of view, but B, I just felt like there was more going on and it was going to turn into possibly like one person doing more than the other and stuff like that. And so, but it was hard because their mindset is, oh my gosh, we can do so much great together. And to go back to your other point, Tiffany, they were a referral from one of my best clients. So I had to basically detail why I didn't think it would be a fit right now. One aspect of that is my wife is part owner of the company. And, and so when I talked to her about it at home, she goes, throw me under the bus, say that I don't want to go in that direction with the company. And I still have to get her a sign off on that. And so what I'm getting at, but I also, even by doing that, the person's feelings could still be hurt. So what I could say is, why don't I bring you into our networking group we have, and you might find somebody else that's even a better fit or synergy than me.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes,
I feel like what the real core aspect of it is telling the person why it might be a no, and then telling them how you can still have a win-win out of it. That, if I kind of tried to look on the outside in. So that's worked really well for me in not burning bridges.
There you go. And it's so important because we do need the ability to say yes or no and really be able to make those choices, whether it's partnering or merging, any of those things. I think a lot of times that it usually, someone has taken on something like that, it didn't go well, and then the next time that they're much more cautious. Whether it's giving part of your company to an employee, whether it's merging with something, I feel like those decisions really need to be, think about it for the long term, because there's so many things that can go wrong, so many things that can go right, but you don't always need to actually merge in order to get the benefits. But once you've merged, there's the opportunity for all sorts of issues.
Yeah, I have a close friend, and I won't go too much detail in it because I don't want her to go, oh, he's talking about me in the show. But she sold a portion of her company, and she thought it was going to be one way, and they made it like, they were like, oh my gosh, we're going to work together. This is going to be so fantastic. Look at we're going to take over the world together. And then once they owned more percentage of the company than her, what she felt is they kind of started running the company the same way as another office of theirs, which was more not local, not hands-on, not intimate way of working with clients and all that. And ultimately, she ended up selling the rest of the company that she had built for 30 years and loved and would have stayed with had she known, ended up selling the rest of the company, the other 49%, I think within 2 years. And she said, I was slowly dying every day. But to your point, you can't go back then. And there's no way she could have known because they were making it seem great. But to your point, there probably would have been a way they could have partnered on some projects together. And then she would have went, oh, their philosophy is a bit different than I've kind of been led to believe. And so, yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways. And like I said, I think if she could go back into a time machine, she'd say no if she had the same question now.
Yeah, it's there's always that kind of hindsight is 2020. And I feel like it's no matter what, we always, people go in believing the best of the situation, which is a good thing. But oftentimes, it's that, we come around for, a second time, and then we decide we need to put a little more weight to some of these pieces because your business and what you've built, for however long is your baby. And so need to really protect that. So you talked about that 5-point framework about how you decide on the things that you're going to say no. Can we touch a little on that?
Yeah, so it's really my personal mission statement, and kind of those 5 points are really just the 5 things that I decided I wanted to do as part of my mission, and then putting up this new request, whatever that request looks like, against those 5 and seeing how many of it does it hit. So that's abstract. So to make it a little more logical, basically my 5-point mission statement is to be the guy that motivates, donates, inspires, educates, and entertains. And that goes through the business. That's what I want our business to do. And that's personally what I want to do. And so the donate, let's say, his part is a little more personal. The motivate part might be more on the business side. But essentially what I do is if somebody says, hey, Corey, I have an opportunity for you to be featured on this cooking show. So then I'm very easily able to look at those 5 and say, how many of those 5 is it going to hit? And quite honestly, years ago, to be on TV, not because I crave fame, but because I wanted to impact lives and I felt the media allows me to do that. But I thought it didn't matter what media. Like I just thought, jump on the show, make a big impression, and then somebody else will see you. And I just thought, yeah. And there's an example where for some people it could be a heck yes, because it could do that. Like maybe they want to be a self-esteem expert on a show. And so they go on a cooking show because they're kind of close. Like they could talk about the cooking and how it increases your self-esteem. Like they could probably make that fit. But for me, when I look at my 5 points, there's almost zero of those that's going to be hit with a TV show about cooking. So that's going to be an easy no without regret always. Now, flip side is somebody says, we want you to speak at this charity event. So maybe I'm not even getting paid. We want you to speak at this charity event. It's for this charity, which your grandma, like they might not know this, but your grandmother suffered with Alzheimer's, let's say, and it's the charity for Alzheimer's and raises money for that. And you're going to be in front of 3,000 people, CEOs of companies, and you get a chance to entertain them, educate them, inspire them. You see where this is going. That's going to be a heck yes without regret. So I put it against those five. If it's 4 or 5 out of 5, it's a heck yes. If it's 1 or 2, it's a heck no. If it's a 3, it's a okay. Let's think about this for at least 5 minutes. Most of my things are okay. I know I'm gone. Like I know it's a no. See ya. Or I know it's a yes. Let's do it. And so that's kind of my 5-point system. And so what that involves for a lot of people is saying, what is my mission? And what's a heck yes within that mission? And what's a heck no?
Do you think that a lot of people are lacking mission in today's day and age?
Yes. I mean, so. Yes, I should have even said that quicker. I should even have had the hesitation. I believe that to be true because of the amount of research I've done. So one of my things that I've done that makes me a little bit unique is I've interviewed at this point, it's over 8,000, but I've been saying 7,500 for a long time, but it's over 8,000 thought leaders. Now, let's be honest, that's a big research pool. Like that's bigger than the Nielsen ratings does to determine how many people are watching TV. But the other, in fairness side, is I'm interviewing a lot of high achievers. So you're going to get skewed answers because you're interviewing mostly one type of person. Now, so the irony is, if I only went by what I'm learning there, Tiffany, I would say, oh no, I think the majority of people have mission statements. So I would actually say the opposite because a lot of those high achievers do. But the reason I say I believe it's the opposite is because of how many people we've worked with over the years that have come to us, or even speaking at events with 3,000 people in the room and saying, how many people here, show of hands, have a mission statement? And there's like 4 hints. So my own studying has been me asking people, and even the people that join and start working with us, even a lot of those people are earlier in their path and don't have one. So I think most people don't have a mission statement. And the irony is that bare essentials of having a mission statement can take you 5 minutes. Like meaning I can literally write down on this paper, I could say, okay, what do I want to be known for? Or what do I want my life to be about? And let's say I'm a parent and that gives me joy. Literally, my mission statement could be the best parent on the block. To be the best parent that the world's ever known. That could be my mission statement. So to me, to write down your mission statement is easy. Crafting it, curating it, finding out it's the real mission statement does take time. But there's nothing stopping anybody from getting started. As I like to say, done is better than perfect. And so writing it down is where it starts. And so I don't think a lot of people have it. And I also don't think most people know how powerful it is once you figure out what your purpose and meaning is. And finally, I don't think people realize it's just a matter of literally taking a pen and a paper and writing for 10 minutes. That's all it takes to start the process.
I think so often when we think mission statement, and I love that there's a trend away from this, but so often for a long time it was, I want to start a business. I'm going to need a 70-page business plan. They would go online and it was like all these templated sections people needed to plan, and they needed a mission statement. But this was the kind of mission statement that was more like a marketing direction mission statement, people, and it had so much more to do for someone else. And I love that we're tossing out those business plans because they are, they serve a place, but very small. Most people don't need the 70-page business plan to start their idea. And the mission statement, this type of mission statement is so much more about what you and your relation, whether it's business or personal, about, who you want to be and what you want to put out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree. And I will say too, for me personally, if you asked me, if you sat down and said, based on your journey today, what are the things you wish you would have done sooner and known sooner? One of the things the thing that almost always comes up is A, how powerful it is to find a purpose in your life, and B, I would say how important a mission statement is to that cause. And where it came to me, by the way, is one day when I was in sales back, like before I even got into the, let's say, personal development space, I was sitting in an office and I looked at this wall and it had this great mission statement. And it started getting me thinking about how the company has this great mission statement, but all these individuals working here probably don't have their own. So why is it so important for a company that serves people to have a mission statement, but individuals who are serving themselves and other people to not have one. And it was just like a light bulb went, I need a mission statement. And then that's what
Yeah.
started me down this path. And then seeing what it's done for my life is what started me talking to other people about, do you have one? And if not, why? And also, if not, let's get you started.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I feel like I know what your tip's going to be, but I'll ask anyway. If you had one tangible tip for someone to go out and ultimately make a big impact on their life and business, what would it be?
Well, I mean, so of course the easy answer would be say start writing your mission statement. That would be the
Right.
easy one. I want to give a second one because that's too easy to say. So
Yes.
that's one, but I say the second one, which ties into this completely. So it's part of that, in my opinion, is if you haven't found a purpose or a passion in your life, you may not realize why it's so important. But as somebody who studied 8,000 people living on purpose, I can tell you it's everything. And most people don't have it. They don't know what is that calling. What is the one thing I'm truly put here to do? I think this is so powerful that it's why Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, basically survived the Holocaust, he said, because he had meaning in his life. And he actually, after that, continued his practice where he did, instead of talk therapy, he would help people find meaning. And he said almost all their problems went away. The blue zones, if people have ever heard of it, the 5 zones where people live the longest. Guess what? The most common thing, the thing they have in common is that they live on purpose. It's one of their 9 things. And I could go on and on. This is proven. So I believe you need to find your purpose. I'll call it uncover your purpose because I think it's already there. So how do you do that? Here's a quick step is take a piece of paper and again, type on your computer if you want, but take a piece of paper, write down, here's the things that get my mojo working. Like whenever I do this, I don't watch the clock. And if you're struggling with those things, say, okay, what did I like doing when I was a kid? What would I do if I won the lottery? What do I think I would actually sit and do? And I could say, if you think you'd go to a beach and retire forever, okay, a month later when you came back, because you
Yeah.
wouldn't stay retired there forever, probably. A month later when you came back, what do you think you would do? And so make this list of what do you like doing? What do people say you're good at? What did you do when you were a kid? And people talk you out of doing it and so on. Make this list. And let's say your list looks like photography, comedy, music, whatever that looks like. Then what I want you to do is put the one at the top that gets you the most excited. And then all I want you to do is figure out what are some baby steps I would have to do to try this, to take action on this. So for example, if it was stand-up comedy, take action steps could be go to watch comedy. It could be take a comic out for lunch, sign up for a comedy workshop. It could be read a book on comedy, watch HBO and say, what did I like about this comic? And make notes. And so these are your baby steps. And each time you do one of these, Tiffany, give yourself a reward. We love rewards. So give yourself some sort of reward, predetermine what it'll be. And let's say there was 5 steps to get on a stand-up stage. My belief is after you've done those 5 things, giving yourself 5 rewards, you've learned about comedy because you've talked to other comics, you've went to the workshop and all that stuff. Now getting on a comedy stage is this much, it's this big. It's that hard now. It's small. It's not as hard as it ever was. It's easier to step on that stage because you've taken all the baby steps along the way and gave yourself rewards and made yourself realize you could do it. So the takeaway from that is what I would do is make the list of the things you think you'd love doing, put them in order, figure out what the baby steps are, give yourself rewards, and take action. And my bet is within 2 months, you'll know if that's a passion for you. And if it is a passion, keep doing it. And ultimately, the purpose will reveal itself. When you find a real passion, I believe passion's the gateway to purpose. You can't just go from nothing to purpose. So start doing the thing. And if you like the thing and keep doing it, eventually the purpose will reveal itself. And the one challenge you're going to get when you bring this up to people is they're going to say, well, yeah, but how do I know I'm going to get paid to do it? It doesn't matter. If it's something you think I need to get paid to do it, it's not a real passion. So start doing it because you love it. And then what I find is if you are going to do it for a living, eventually the path to that will reveal itself. So just do it on the side. You're now doing something you love. It'll make your day better anyway. You're following a journey of something you think you enjoy. And even if you only did it for 2 months and found it isn't the one, who cares? You did something you thought you loved for 2 months. Move on to the next one. So that's a bigger take action, but that's a tangible thing you can start doing today. Make that list and then also write a mission statement. If you do those 2 things, I believe you are 1,000 steps closer to whatever it is you're meant to do.
Wow. And an enjoyable journey. Well, as you're saying, try it out. I mean, there's no harm in trying it out, and you can have so much benefit to gain. I love that. Corey, where can people connect with you, or can they learn more about the work that you're doing?
So if somebody's listening that they felt they want to get their message out to more people, that's what we do, as I mentioned, with Blue Talks. So if somebody truly wanted to follow that path, So if they wanted to reach out and say, okay, how could I speak on one of those stages? How could I become a best-selling author? How could I get guidance around increasing my profile or reaching more clients or what have you? If that's the path, I would send them to an easy website. It's speakonblue.com, and blue is BLU. So
Okay.
speakonblue.com. That way people can grab a time to chat with us and see if we can help them. If you want to go a shorter path and you just want to reach out to me, then you could simply go to probably Corey Poirier Media.com. And the reason I say that one is because when you go there, all the links for social are on there. So that way I don't have to tell you like 12 places or anything. So either speakonblue.com if you what you heard around the getting your message out to more people appeals to you, or you're a coach or a speaker or an author or wannabe. The other side is if you want to just connect with me and say you heard me on the show, CoreyPoirierMedia.com, that'll get you to me.
Awesome. Thank you, Corey, so much. It's been so valuable. And I think there's just so many pieces here that can not just help business, but also help with just building and improving your life, really becoming one of those high achievers.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate it, Tiffany. It's been an absolute pleasure, and you made it easy for me.
Don't forget to click subscribe, comment below, and share the episode with a fellow entrepreneur. If you want to take us on the road, we are available everywhere you listen to podcasts. Thanks so much. See you next time.